Hey, this is Paul with MakeUseOf.com, and in this video, we're checking out the late 2022, early 2023 Razer Blade 17. Paired with its beautiful 17-inch display, the Blade 17 can be configured with up to an Intel Core i9-12900H processor, NVIDIA RTX 3080 Ti graphics card, and 64 gigabytes of RAM, which of course makes it capable of handling most AAA games and 3D tasks. But as you can imagine, with its unique design, there are a few things that you should keep in mind before purchasing one. And while this is one of the smallest 17-inch gaming laptops available in early 2023, its mediocre battery life, along with its 7+ pound combined weight with its charger, makes this less than ideal for taking on the go. Instead, with its large, fast, and vibrant display and its excellent port selection, the Razer Blade 17 is positioning itself as a very beautiful desktop replacement, which you can occasionally take on the go. And while there are other competing 17-inch gaming laptops with similar specs available for less, for a lot of users, the unique design of Razer's laptops, combined with its selection of first-party accessories, along with their superb software lighting integrations with other compatible devices, might make this worth the premium for some users. The Razer Blade 17 that I'm reviewing is one of the higher-end models. It normally costs $3,399, but it's currently on sale for $2,899. This has the 12th gen Intel Core i9 processor, a 17.3-inch QHD 240Hz G-Sync display, the RTX 3070 Ti, 1TB NVMe SSD, 16 gigabytes of DDR5 4800 MHz RAM, and of course, its per-key RGB Razer Chroma keyboard. The cheapest model of the Razer Blade 17 currently starts at $2,600, and it comes with the Intel i7 12800H and the RTX 3060, which is still very expensive for the specs that you're getting. In the US at least, there's currently only one other model. It costs $3,300, and the only change is that it upgrades the RAM to 32 gigabytes. There actually used to be a 3080 and a 3080 Ti model, but as far as I can tell, at least on Razer's official site, they only have those available refurbished. You can find several competing models for about $900 less, including the very popular MSI Raider GE77HX. Now, if you're actually willing to sacrifice display quality a little bit, you can save even more by getting the MSI Katana GF76. This is currently one of the best value 17.3-inch gaming laptops with similar specs. It has a 144Hz full HD display, a Core i9-12900H, an RTX 3070 Ti, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and a 1TB NVMe. Now, as you can see with the Blade 17, its bezels are relatively thin, especially on its sides and near the top where it houses its cameras and sensors. Whereas at the bottom, we do have a slightly thicker bezel, and that's where a lot of other gaming laptops, especially ones by MSI, are switching over to that 16:10 golden aspect ratio, which just allows you to have a little bit more vertical real estate on your screen without requiring a larger chassis. The Blade 17 is available with 3 displays. The most popular is actually the QHD IPS anti-glare display that we have here. This is a great balance of resolution and refresh rate, which makes it a great choice for gaming and content creation. With its 100% DCI P3 color gamut, this display provides excellent colors and contrast. And with G-Sync, your games can match the display's frame rate to minimize screen tearing and provide a smoother experience overall. The screen, as you may or may not be able to tell in this bright, sun-drenched room right now, isn't the brightest. It's okay for indoor use, and when dealing with sun and glare, the matte display does prevent, a lot of unwanted reflections, but at the same time, I probably wouldn't be using this outdoors too much. For the same price, you can also choose the Full HD 360Hz display, which could be a good choice if you prioritize frame rate over fidelity. While the RTX 3070 Ti is a very capable graphics card, unless you lower your visual settings to the lowest in your games, it's unlikely that you'll hit those frame rates in most AAA titles. Lastly, Razer also offers a 4K 144Hz display for additional clarity if you don't mind sacrificing your refresh rate, making it a good choice for content creators. And aside from the Razer name, of course, one of the biggest selling features of this laptop is its design and its build quality. And just like the rest of the Blade lineup, the design here has hardly changed over the past few years. Build quality is excellent with hardly any flex. The only place I could notice just a little bit is towards the center here. Just a little bit. If you press down really hard, an amount that you probably wouldn't ever really exert, there's just a little bit, but aside from that, it feels rock solid. Now, this laptop on its own weighs 6 pounds and 5 ounces. Even with its charger, which weighs about another 1.5 pounds, the Blade 17 is still lighter than most other 17-inch gaming laptops, which usually weigh around 7 to 9 pounds, not including the battery. And while that's a pretty significant weight saving, it's unlikely that you'll actually want to carry this around all day. I instead see this as being a good choice for users who want the best performance in a compact form factor without having to sacrifice their screen size. Now, don't get me wrong, when you want to pack this up, put it in a backpack, and use it on the go, whether it's a cafe, a bookstore, on an airplane, I mean, you can certainly do that, but this weight will get to you, and compared to 14 or a 15-inch laptop, there's definitely a trade-off with this larger size here. Now, something that's actually new for this year, and you may or may not notice it, but there's a anti-fingerprint resistant design, which from my experience with lighter taps like this, something that would probably be picked up on most other aluminum laptops, isn't as noticeable here. The only time you'll really notice your fingerprints picked up is if you press, hold, and drag. So like when you're actually lifting this, moving it around, that's where you'll still notice it, especially with this being an all black design, but it's still significantly better than the previous years. I'd say to the non-gamer, the Blade 17 looks pretty ordinary, yet still very sleek. I like how this doesn't necessarily scream, this is a gaming laptop. So for example, you're a gamer, but you also want to use this in a more professional setting. A lot of people don't know what this logo is, and you could probably even cover it up and make it more discreet if you wanted to, but you know, you can't really tell that this is a gaming laptop. To the trained eye who knows what the Razer logo is, they'll know that this is very powerful and intended for gaming, but it doesn't mean you can't use this in a more professional setting. You know, compared to some gaming laptops which has a lot of red, RGB on the fronts, it's a little bit harder to hide that gaming aesthetic, whereas this is a lot more discreet. Now, before moving on to the mouse and keyboard, let me just show you what one-hand opening this is like. Now, typically, I would want to grab it like right here with the side of my finger. Instead, I feel like I need to use 1 or 2 with my nails at least, and really grab that lip underneath here in order to open it up. Compared to some laptops like my MacBook Pro, it's certainly not as convenient, but it is doable. Now opening it up, it's interesting to see that even though we have this larger 17-inch body, Razer has instead opted for a more compact keyboard deck, which is more comparable to a smaller 15-inch design. Now on one hand, it does allow them to fit these 2 large THQ speakers, which are good, but not the best, honestly.
Somebody meeting me here?
I'd certainly hope so.
It does seem like a dreadful place to be stranded.
There's something inside. Excuse me, it's Booker DeWitt. I guess you're expecting me?
I think I would have preferred either smaller and worse sounding speakers, or for them to reduce the bezels around the speakers and just spread the keyboard out a little bit. And even though most users will use an external mouse and keyboard at most, if not all times, if you're like me, you'll sometimes find yourself gaming on the go, and you might just be using an external mouse along with the built-in keyboard. Key travel here is decent, though not particularly impressive for this category. In this case, using the WASD keys is fine. However, its placement feels a little bit awkward as it's closer to the left side of the trackpad than I'm used to. And while it wasn't frequent when I was using those WASD keys, the left side, or actually the right side of my thumb, would occasionally drag along the trackpad there, giving me unwanted input. Another issue though is I was frequently hitting the caps lock button when I was intending to hit the shift button, which in certain games can definitely be very problematic. And this could also be very important for some users, but you'll notice that we have a smaller sized arrow key on the right-hand side here, where they basically made it the same size as half of the space bar, instead of having full-size arrow keys for your up and down. Likewise, we don't have a numpad, which is something we could definitely see with a laptop of this size. Now in terms of using the trackpad, it works fine. No complaints there. You can click up to about maybe 70 to 80% of its height. Some trackpads, like with the MacBook Pro, you can actually click all the way at the top there without issue. It's just something I'm a little bit used to, but not a big deal. Now, complementing the sleek looks of the Blade 17, we have these very right-angled designs here, with the exception of minimally cornered corners. But just as with my MacBook, which has similarly angled edges here, it's very uncomfortable if you place your wrist pads on it. So like I said, if you're gaming on this, typing a lot, and using the built-in keyboard, it will get to you if you don't have a rest pad along the edge here. When it comes to heat and noise, I was able to use the Razer Blade 17 for extended periods of time. It'll definitely get warm, but it never got hot or uncomfortable to touch. The palm rest and keyboard deck managed to stay cooler. We don't have exhaust on the sides. Instead, we have our exhaust at the back here. So this is where all our heat is escaping from. So the important parts are keeping this area cool, which they actually do a very good job at. And likewise, because they don't have any exhaust coming from the side, if you're using an external mouse along with the built-in keyboard, you're not gonna have any issues of heat coming onto your right hand, or if you're a left-handed person, no issues there either. But just like other gaming laptops, the fans are quick to kick in, even as soon as you start the game.
DeWitt, I guess you're expecting me?
Than I do.
I suppose he does, but there's no point in asking.
Why not?
Because he doesn't row.
He doesn't row.
No, he doesn't row.
Huh? I see what you mean.
And while they do get loud, they never sound like a jet is taking off like some other gaming laptops tend to do. You'll still probably want to have a good pair of noise canceling headphones if you're gaming with this, but it's not terrible. For wireless connectivity, the Blade 17 uses the latest Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.2. Despite its thin profile, it also gives you an excellent I/O for connecting all your displays, accessories, and peripherals. On our left-hand side, we have Gigabit, which is 2.5 gigabit, to USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type A, Thunderbolt 4, and an audio combo jack. On the right-hand side, we have a full-size SD card reader, Thunderbolt 4, USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type A, HDMI 2.1, and a cable lock. And going back to what I was saying earlier, one of the bigger selling features when buying a Razer product, and one of the reasons you might be willing to pay that premium, is some of those core integrations it has, not just with its keyboard deck, but other compatible accessories too. And if you're a big fan of RGB effects, you're definitely gonna love the customization you can get with the Chroma Studio. Using this software suite, users can customize the lighting effects on their keyboard, as well as other gaming peripherals, including mice, headsets, and more. With Chroma Studio, you can choose from a variety of lighting presets, such as static colors, breathing effects, and reactive lighting. You can then create custom profiles, which you can save and access and switch between later. I do find it to be a little bit complicated. It's almost like it has layers on the left-hand side, so you can have different effects on top of each other, so it can get a little bit confusing, but with a little time, especially if you're passionate about getting cool lighting effects, you can get some really cool results. Now, of course, all that would be meaningless if performance here wasn't impressive. Thankfully, with its Core i9 processor and the RTX 3070 Ti, you can get great results, which make it great for multitasking and, of course, gaming. Lastly, we mentioned this a little bit, but battery life is not very impressive despite this large size. We're not really getting much more than 3 hours. Put your screen brightness to minimum, and you're just doing a lighter task, whether it's web browsing, maybe some spreadsheets, you might be able to squeeze 4 hours out of it. But there's a good chance if you're packing this up and taking it on the go, you're gonna wanna take your charger with you too. So that's been my experience using the Razer Blade 17, formerly known as the Razer Blade Pro 17. Really nice design, but mediocre battery life, and of course, it's still heavy, making it not the best choice for taking it on the go. That said, if you're looking for a really nice looking desktop replacement, which you'll occasionally pack up and use on the go, the Blade 17 is still one of the best choices, but it is very expensive. And like we said, if you want just the best value specs that match this, there are a lot of other alternatives. So thank you again for checking out this review. This has been Paul with MakeUseOf.com. Until the next one, catch you later.